I'm Lauren Morris, the host of the podcast, The Mostly Mental Mom.
Can you tell me a little bit about your own mental health journey?
Yes, of course. It's still a journey. I'm definitely still mid-journey. But I've been dealing with mental health for over 15 years, diagnosed clinically with bipolar 2 disorder for 10 years, 2014. And still on my journey of figuring out what the day to day looks like living with bipolar disorder because it doesn't just go away magically. Even with treatment, all the right things, whenever stress and curveballs come at you, in my experience living with bipolar and mental illness, you have to tackle it differently. Life stressors, all the things is a different ball game for me. I think people like yourself and Gabe, like other people. And um, it's taken a long time. I mean, it's taken 10 years really to finally go, okay, like what, what does bipolar look like for me in the day to day? It's going to be messy. That's what my conclusion is for me. It's not neat and clean. It may get to a neat and clean point, but not yet. And I feel like other people out there in life in general, but with bipolar and mental illness, feel the same way that they are just lost in this fight that they can't win and they feel very isolated and very alone. And I kept waiting for it to be wrapped up in a bow to like put it in a book or, something like that. And that didn't happen. And so here I am. I was like, you know what? We're just going to unfilter it and just let it out and just let my journey be live because I know there's other people around that are going, I'm by myself, but they're not. So,
Yeah, what inspired you to create a podcast?
um, well, so I wanted to write a book. I've been with my counselor for 10 years. She's phenomenal. And if, I could go back to school, I would go be a counselor. I've learned that's not my route. And so at first I was like, it's a book. That's the journey. But I've never been a writer. That has always been just kind of a roadblock for me growing up. It just wasn't super natural. So writing a book was daunting. Add on bipolar disorder, and that was really daunting. So I was like, okay, let's back burner that. Maybe it'll just kind of come naturally. Like maybe I'll, journaling. Journaling's a huge tool in therapy. I never could even get into journaling because me and predictability and routine don't really go hand in hand in my journey with bipolar disorder. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm not really collecting data for writing a book either. So maybe we need to consider another route. Music is another passion of mine. And over the last year, I actually was just fortunate enough to have a friend go, why don't you try to write it into lyrics instead of like book form or journal form or article form? And I was like, it's going to be really crappy, but I'll give it a shot. And so that is the short version of how I started to get what was in my head out into a form where I was like, this is relatable. Like, this is something that someone else could say, see, hear, read, all the things. But I was by no means wanting to go the music route. That wasn't the journey for me. And so it just evolved into, well, how else can I put this out? I was like, well, putting it out with the guitar and lyrics is somewhat like a good avenue, and it's at least it let me see that there is merit in the words coming out and the story being written. And so I was like, all right, maybe it's a podcast. So of course I did the first thing that you do when you go to look up your niche or area is I'm like, first just mental health on podcasts. It's pretty broad, right? I'm like, let's go deeper. Let's actually see if there is a bipolar title on a podcast, and Gabe popped up. And I was like, oh, snap, here we go. So I was like, I can do this. And also really it was that kind of the freedom of knowing it's my journey and I'm controlling that. And with bipolar, like we don't have a lot of control in a lot of things. So how you share your journey, I think, is very precious because it's kind of the only thing you can control in a way about it. Um, and so that just really met me in the middle of where I was at and how to do it. And I also learned that it's kind of easier to talk to people. I don't know, it's just like the general, like
Yeah.
that's easier than going to someone that knows me. It's just a whole different relation of how you kind of connect. So,
And I also live with bipolar disorder too, and doing these interviews is therapeutic, and especially talking to people with lived experience, it's like, oh, I'm not alone, and all that. Everyone has a story, and we could all succeed. Do you feel that way when you hear stories of people with lived experience succeeding?
1,000%. Like listening, I just spent the day listening to interviews with from on here with you and other people, and I just was constantly going, "Oh my gosh, me too! Oh my gosh, me too!" Oh, like it was a constant, and the way, like I think it was Gabe's that it was, yeah, I can talk about the way I deal with, let's say, holidays and bipolar disorder, but it's going to look different than yours and anyone else that struggles with it.
Yeah.
And so I love this, like, everyone needs to talk about it. There's not one expert in it, like there's not this one way, there's not one path. And for me, I think my 10-year journey with bipolar, like diagnosed with it, has very much shown me that like there is no one way. I just want people to know that they can show up, and that is really like key. That showing up for the next hour is sometimes all I can do whenever I'm in more crisis modes or stressful modes. And so yes, hearing that other people are succeeding and also defining success, how that makes sense to you too, and not necessarily off of, the checklist of life that we're kind of raised and taught with and all the things, because that doesn't apply to us.
Yeah, I listened to your first episode, and you talk about being nervous and sharing your story and all that. But how did it feel to, openly talk about this?
It was relieving at first. Well, it was relieving in general. I think that comes with the territory of bipolar. I think it's like almost like fulfilling a little bit of mania in a way because it's
Mhm.
risky. It's not like not everyone's kind of like, what the heck are you doing? And how'd you just talk for 30 minutes and not stop? I'm like, I don't know. That's when some part of the way my brain's wired just kicks into
Yeah.
gear. But and it was afterwards. At first, I did have fear. I was like, oh crap! I just put this out there into the world, and now what? But I was so quickly reminded with just a few comments on either social media or a text message of like, oh my gosh, I feel seen. And I was like, there's my why. Okay, cool, done. I will make myself be a fool all I need to share my story for someone else to be, validated by it. So,
You talk in the podcast about uh, getting out of bed and day to day stuff. And that's what I've been to conferences and they talk a lot about the scientific and stuff. I want people to talk about the day to day and just how do you get out of bed and all that. That's kind of, I think, someone with lived experience, that's more the focus than the big thing.
right. 100%. There's experts, there's people that went to school for all this, and we've got them to give us the clinical and the definitions, and they're wonderful, and we would not be where we are without them.
Right.
But at the same time, the lived experience is crucial. It's so important. And for me, and then since you've listened, I call it the silent battle. That is how I kind of define my like inner bipolar battle that's in my head. It's there every single day. It does not go away. It won't go away. I accept that now. For a long time, I kind of thought it was like I didn't fully understand. It takes education on the illness, the mental illness. But the silent battle is what I refer it to in the podcast and in my own life, and what I particularly want my life experience with this to, I guess, advocate is that, like, I don't have everything together. I still don't have like the success pieces that you kind of expect to see. And I've spent so much time putting expectation on that, that silent battle has just been fighting it, going, nope, you're gonna fail, you're gonna fail, you're gonna, like, it's just that dark little voice that just kind of will be at bay, and it's fine, but it does not take much to let it reign supreme if you're not doing the mental health, um, care. If you're not counseling, you're not medicated, you're not self-care, and or doing whatever it is that you learn in your journey. And that's the other piece, is it's just, I'm trying to be so specific in sharing mine because I want people to know that they all look different. And and it's just like listening to y'all's, like, I relate to it 100%. So it doesn't make it not valid, but I very much have struggled. You mentioned the getting out of the bed. Mine has, I'm bipolar too, and it has escalated over the years due to life stressors
Yeah.
adding kind of into it, to the point where I actually learned that it can go, mine did not, thankfully, but it can go all the way to borderline personality. Like, it can switch over.
Yeah.
And but my body, and in hindsight, I probably have lived with bipolar since I was a teenager. It was not really a depression evolved into it when I look back on how I handled life, but I'm a very on or off switch person. So it's like I'm in full gear, and that's when my mania is kind of my friend, and I can really go and be productive, or it's off and I'm in bed for 10 days. And that's, in the podcast I reference, it hit me big when my daughter was an infant, and I literally would sleep for a week, and my husband would have to take care of her because I couldn't get out of bed. And I'm still trying to figure out how you describe that, because to anyone that doesn't have, even someone with bipolar disorder that doesn't have that level of depression that sinks in, you can't grasp your, you can't grasp it. And I also want to be like, it's okay if you don't grasp it. That's not the point. It's just that you have to know it's okay to speak your story so that you can get help, or, so that silent battle doesn't go the other way, so it does not take over.
And into your podcast, you talked about, people with mental illness working. And a big thing for me is when we talk about people with mental illness, I think they could succeed in anything. Nothing should stop them. But the negative conversation of mental illness always has to be like a sad conversation. It doesn't. Do you like talking about, the positive stuff and the negative as well?
Um, I do, and I remember to do so, if I'm being honest, because I can get so wrapped up in the negative.
Yeah.
It's just that can be all consuming. But I think that's a part of this right here, is like, and every day I'm shown, like, on social, because I'm doing this everywhere. Like, I am on TikTok lives trying to just connect with people, and it is, that's scarier than this or podcast, just for the record, because you're just sitting in a room by yourself. It's really weird. But I have connected with people, and it's just been a few, but it's just those one connections of, like, thank you, just for being vulnerable and authentic. And that's where in the last podcast episode, I'm like, I feel like this is it. Like, I feel like this is the key to so much. It's just being vulnerable and authentic, that even is bigger than this mental health journey we're on. And I think that's the positive. And I see a lot of positives. Like there's so much. I listen to Greg Martin, the bipolar general. Oh, the way he described life in the beginning was very much like that spoke to me. Like that was like high functioning, just, excel, like you're just life's you got it. It takes a while for the bipolar really like knock you down. That's why it's like I see it now when I look back in high school, college, 20 plus years ago, but uh I see all the positives it has when I reflect, I see it. In the day to day, it can be harder to see the
Right.
positives for
Yeah.
sure. But with working, I've had to redefine success for me. And that's one reason why I'm doing this. I'm trying to pave a path that I can cater to my mental illness. I usually can't, if it's someone else's world and it's their company, job, whatever, I can't do so as much. So that's kind of, and also just showing it's possible that there's different ways to be successful and that sometimes success is literally showing up.
What are some of the things you've learned from your family?
Um, to talk about it. Nobody talked about it. I will joke kind of with my cousins because there were four girls and all three of our parents were severely uh in mental health. I actually lost my aunt due to it. And then my dad is in care now because of it. And my uncle too. And we all said, like, why did nobody talk to us? Because we're all over the map too. Like we're all dealing with our mental health journey. And it, it made it very challenging to then like handle them as adults or, as older, as parents knowing it, but not knowing it early on in life and then piecing it all together. And then now with my daughter, and thankfully, the biggest piece my counselor taught me is she said, like, please, like, while she can tell me all day long to put the guilt aside, well, guilt loves to just trickle in whenever it feels like it, especially when it comes to your family and how your mental health is affecting them. But she said, your daughter's going to be one of the most compassionate people on the face of the planet if you are real with her. Like, if you just tell her what's happening within reason, of course, and age and all the things. And she's not kidding. This girl can pick up on an emotion in a heartbeat, like, and she's 7. So there's a lot of value in the family history and being able to learn from it, to take stock in it, to be able to educate my daughter in prep that maybe she struggles with it, maybe she doesn't. Like all those things, just kind of doing as a parent. I know you're a parent too. You're doing your best to set them up for success. And
Yes.
for me, it's less about the accolades and the career that my husband's great at coaching her on all those things. And I'm more going, honey, if you fail this test, it's all right. You're going to fail a lot of tests. That's life.
Right. Yeah.
Like, so, yeah.
What do you do to help your own mental health?
Um, Music is a huge therapy, whether it's listening to it, playing, just picking on the guitar, playing the piano. That definitely allows me to either escape out of my head through someone else's work or um, art, or get it, or actually put the thoughts out of my head on paper, because that to me has translated better because it's like it's more acceptable to say this in a song than it is to tell you. You'd be like, what? Like,
Yeah.
like it'd be a lot, maybe, it just wouldn't come off as well. But for some reason, if you put it in lyric form, it's acceptable, So that's one of my ways. Exercising, getting outside and walking. That I have to get out of the house. And I have to force that. That is not an easy thing because I would hermit it up in here for the rest of my days, probably if I could. But I know it's not healthy, and that's my biggest thing. And medication therapy, I could not. Uh,
Yeah.
Lithium was my miracle med, so to speak. that was the one that really solidified things for me. But I think the one of the biggest things for me is realistic expectations for myself. Um, no, like kind of setting that standard of my psychiatrist actually explained it this way. She said, you have to realize, Lauren, like medications bring you to a certain like line.
Yeah,
That line's still really not a brain that's functioning without bipolar. Like it's close,
you're right.
but it's not fully at, I'm gonna use normal very lightly there, but it's not at really at normal. And that's at normal with no stressors. Like that's what the medication does for you, is gets you at just this one line. But you get hit with a life stressor or something, anything that is a curveball, um, you're still going to be handling a lot. And really coming to that acceptance allows me to not beat myself up. Like so whenever there is those days in bed or I'm having a lot harder time handling something in life than anyone else, I'm not going, what is wrong with you? Like it, well, there's something wrong with me, but I know what it is and I know how to handle it.
Yeah, my treatment changed my life with medicine and therapy, psychiatrist, and good support system. But uh, there's still days where it's touch and go and all that. I'm not like cured or anything. It's still like I feel better and I get to do things that I really want to do. But there's days where I'm, taking 3 naps. So,
Hmm. Yep, 100%. Um, and I know that like there's a lot of stability for some. They find a very good groove,
mhm.
and I'm really, I know I'll get there at some point. I don't know when, but maybe my journey's different. And that's again back to why I just felt called, for really lack of any other word, to just go ahead and share it and stop waiting for the perfect result or outcome of my mental health journey. Because what if this is it? And someone else needs to know they got somebody else.
Yeah. Since you just started your podcast, I'll ask you a future question. Where do you want to see your mission in the next 3 to 5 years?
um, I want to see a massive representation and community of people just word vomiting their stories.
Yes, that sounds
And
good.
not just mental health.
Yeah.
I feel like it's like, yeah, that, because this is where I'm the expert at, right? Like, so like I can start here. Um, but I hope it's a launching pad for the human race to come back to this, what we all have in common, that we are flawed and not perfect and all struggle with something or all battling something. It may be short term, it may be long term. Um, but that's my hope, is that it doesn't need to be my podcast that's big or anything like that. I just want it to encourage others to break down the wall, share your story, because trust me, looking like nobody cares or no, like crickets, response, like all of that is worth it once you get that one comment back, that one person that was listening out of 1,000. It makes it's just, it's a done deal. It's like, oh, okay, cool. This is what I'm supposed to do.
How can people reach out to you and learn more?
The easiest way to find me is at the Mostly Mental Mom on all social media platforms. I'm there. My website is themostlymentalmom.com. So, and that has all the links. You can email me from there and contact me that way. I would love to talk to anyone that wants to know more. You don't have to have a mental illness. That's not, if you want to ask me, if you just want to grill me with questions, I'm here for it. I'm here to just literally spread the awareness however I can. and so grateful to be here to do it. So